She wasn't the kind of woman people looked at twice. Not because she wasn't beautiful, she was, but because she carried herself quietly, like someone who had learned, very early, that the world wasn't going to hand her anything. Her name was Emily Smith. Emily Smith grew up in a small apartment above a dry cleaning shop in a city that was always too loud and never quite warm enough. Her mother worked 6 days a week pressing other people's clothes. Her father had left when Emily was 7, not dramatically, not with a fight. He just didn't come home one evening, and eventually they stopped waiting. So Emily learned to be self-sufficient the way some children learn to swim, by being thrown into deep water and figuring it out. She studied hard, not because anyone pushed her to, but because she understood, with the kind of clarity that only comes from watching your mother's hands blister from steam irons, that education was the only door she could actually open herself. By the time she was 23, Emily had graduated top of her business program, landed an entry-level job at a mid-sized marketing firm called Aldrin & Company, and was renting a studio apartment that was barely bigger than her mother's living room. She was happy, or close enough to it. And then she met Daniel. Daniel Marsh walked into Aldrin & Company on a Tuesday. He was tall, confident, the kind of man who laughed easily and made everyone in the room feel like they were the most interesting person he'd ever met, right up until he turned away and forgot them entirely. He was a senior account manager. Emily was a junior copywriter. In the architecture of office politics, they weren't supposed to cross paths much. But Daniel had a habit of finding the most capable person in any room and positioning himself next to them. He found Emily within his first week. It started with coffee. He'd stop by her desk, ask what she was working on, genuinely listen to her answers. Or at least, he was very good at seeming like he was listening. Within a month, they were eating lunch together every day. Within 3 months, he told her she was the most interesting woman he'd ever known. Within 6 months, Emily was in love. She had never been in love before. Not really. She'd had a boyfriend in college, a quiet, kind boy who moved to another city and faded gently from her life. But this was different. Daniel made her feel chosen, seen. Like all those years of quiet, invisible hard work had finally been noticed by someone worth noticing her. She didn't see the warning signs. Or maybe she did, and she chose not to look directly at them. The way you don't look directly at the sun. The cracks didn't appear all at once. They never do. The first one appeared about 8 months in, when Emily pitched an idea in a team meeting, a full campaign concept she'd spent 3 weekends developing. It was bold, creative, exactly the kind of thinking Aldrin & Company had been lacking. Her manager loved it. But 2 days later, in a follow-up presentation to the company's directors, Daniel presented the idea, with a few tweaks, and his name on the cover slide. Emily sat in the back of that conference room and felt something cold move through her chest. Afterward, she found him in the hallway. "That was my concept," she said quietly. She wasn't angry yet. She was confused. She genuinely thought there might be an explanation. Daniel smiled. That easy, practiced smile. "Come on, Emily. You know how these things work. I have the relationships with the directors. I can push it further than you can right now. This is good for both of us." She wanted to believe him. So she did. That was her first mistake. Over the next 2 years, a pattern formed. Emily would develop. Daniel would present. Emily would create. Daniel would take credit. And every time she raised it, quietly, privately, he had a reason. A justification. A reminder of how much he cared about her. How he was protecting her. how she wasn't ready yet for that kind of visibility. And here is the part that is hardest to explain to someone who hasn't lived it. She believed him, not because she was naive. Emily was one of the sharpest people in that building. But because love has a way of making us rewrite what we see. We look at the evidence and we choose the interpretation that hurts less. She told herself, he's ambitious. That's not a flaw. She told herself, he loves me. She told herself, when the time is right, he will lift me up the way I have been lifting him. She was still telling herself these things on the evening she came home early from a client dinner, a dinner that had been canceled last minute, and found a woman's jacket on the back of her kitchen chair. Daniel was in the shower. Emily sat down on the couch and looked at that jacket for a very long time. She didn't cry. Not right away. She just sat there while something inside her, something that had been bending for 2 years, finally, quietly broke. When Daniel came out of the shower, Emily was still sitting there. He saw her face and knew immediately. His expression moved through several things in quick succession: surprise, calculation, then a performance of remorse so polished it almost looked real. "Emily, don't," she said. And that was all. She didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She stood up, went to the bedroom, packed a bag, just the essentials, and walked out of the apartment they had shared for 14 months. She called her mother from the street outside. Her mother didn't say much. She just said, "Come home." And Emily did. She slept in her childhood bedroom that night, the same room where she had studied for every exam, made every plan, built every quiet dream, and she stared at the ceiling, and she made a decision. Not a decision born from anger. Anger burns out. Anger is loud and temporary. This was something colder. Something that would last. She decided that she would never again give her best work to someone else's name. She decided that everything she had built, every idea, every strategy, every sleepless night, from this point forward, would belong to her. And then she slept. Better than she had in 2 years. Emily resigned from Aldrin and Company the following Monday. Her manager tried to talk her out of it. He told her she had a future there. She smiled politely and handed in her badge. She had saved enough money to survive for 4 months without income. 4 months was what she gave herself. She spent the first week doing nothing but sleeping, eating her mother's cooking, and writing. Pages and pages in a notebook, every idea she'd ever had that Daniel had presented as his own. Every campaign, every strategy, every insight she had quietly handed over and watched someone else take credit for. There were 23 of them. 23 original concepts. 2 years of her best thinking, sitting in a notebook, finally with her name on them. In the second week, she started making calls. Emily had spent 2 years building relationships, real ones, not Daniel's kind. The clients who had worked with the campaigns she created without knowing she created them. The junior team members who knew exactly who the ideas came from. The one senior director, a woman named Iris, who had always looked at Emily a little too knowingly during those presentations. Iris met her for coffee on a Wednesday morning. "I always wondered when you'd leave," Iris said. "I should have left sooner," Emily said. "Yes," Iris said simply. "You should have. What do you need?" What Emily needed was an introduction. A door opened just wide enough for her to get her foot in. Iris made 3 calls that afternoon. Within 6 weeks of leaving Aldrin and Company, Emily had her first independent client. It was a small, sustainable fashion brand, only 3 years old, struggling to find their voice in a crowded market. They had a small budget and a founder who cared deeply about doing things right. Emily threw everything she had into it. She worked 16-hour days. She slept badly. She second-guessed herself constantly. There was no Daniel to stand in front of the room and perform confidence on her behalf. It was just her ideas, and her name on every single thing she produced. It was terrifying. It was also the first time in 2 years she felt fully alive. The campaign launched in the brand's 4th year. Within 3 months, their online sales had grown by 340%. A lifestyle magazine called the campaign one of the freshest brand voices to emerge this year. They quoted the strategist by name, Emily Smith. She printed that article and put it in a drawer. She didn't post it anywhere. She didn't need to. She just needed to know it existed, that something she had built was standing in the world with her name on it, and no one could take it back. By the end of her first year working independently, Emily had 4 clients. By the end of her 2nd year, she had 11 and had hired her first 2 employees. Young women, both of them. Both sharp. Both, she noticed, slightly invisible in the way she had once been invisible. She paid them well. She put their names on things. She told them their ideas were good when they were good and helped them improve when they weren't. She named her company Groundwork Creative. Not a glamorous name. Not meant to be. It was a reminder to herself every single day that everything real is built from the ground up. That there are no shortcuts. That the work itself is the thing. By her 3rd year, Groundwork Creative had a team of 9 and a client list that included 2 of the brands Aldrin and Company had been desperately trying to win for years. She didn't take pleasure in that. Not exactly. But she noticed it. She ran into Daniel on a Thursday. It had been 3 years and 4 months since she had walked out of their apartment. She had not thought about him every day, not even close. Somewhere in the 2nd year, she had realized she had gone an entire week without thinking about him at all. That felt like winning something important. He was coming out of a coffee shop she sometimes passed on her way to a client meeting. He looked the same. A little older. A little less certain. He saw her and stopped. For a moment, neither of them said anything. She noticed he was carrying an Aldrin and Company tote bag. Still there then. Still in the same place. Still presenting other people's ideas in conference rooms. Emily, he said. You look, he stopped. She did look different. Not in a way he could easily describe. She was wearing the same kind of clothes. Her hair was the same. But something in the way she stood had changed. Like a building that has had its foundations reinforced. Hi Daniel, she said. I heard you started your own thing, he said. That's great. Really? Thank you, she said. There was a pause. He seemed to want something from her. She wasn't sure what. Anger, maybe? Or forgiveness. Or acknowledgement that he had mattered enough to haunt her. She felt none of those things. She felt, mostly, like she was running slightly late for a meeting. Take care of yourself, she said. And she walked past him and didn't look back. People have a romantic idea of revenge. They imagine confrontations. Declarations. A moment where the person who wronged you finally sees what they lost and suffers visibly for it. But real revenge, the kind that actually satisfies, is quieter than that. It looks like Emily on a Tuesday morning, sitting at the head of a table in a boardroom she rented for her company's first all-team strategy day. 9 people around that table. All of them there because of work she built. All of them, in some small way, being treated better because of lessons she had learned the hard way. It looks like her mother visiting the Groundwork office for the first time, standing in the middle of the room, looking at the awards on the shelf and the names on the door, and crying quietly without explanation. It looks like Emily at 31, sitting in a business class seat on a flight to a conference where she has been invited to speak, not as someone's assistant, not as the invisible brain behind someone else's presentation, but as herself. As the thing she had always been, even when no one was looking. She opened her notebook on the flight. At the top of a fresh page, she wrote a single sentence, something she had read once and never forgotten. The best revenge is becoming someone they never could have held back. She looked at it for a moment. Then she crossed it out. Not because it wasn't true, but because she wasn't doing this for him anymore. She hadn't been for a long time. She turned to a clean page and started writing her speech. And that is the story of Emily Smith, a woman who is overlooked, underestimated, and quietly robbed of credit for her own brilliance by someone who is supposed to love her, who didn't collapse, who didn't perform her pain for anyone's approval, who simply, steadily, built something real, something with her name on it, something no one could ever take away. If you're in the middle of your own Aldrin and Company, your own Daniel, I want you to hear this. The work you're doing right now is not wasted. Even if someone else is taking credit for it, even if no one is watching, you are learning, you are building, you are becoming. And one day, maybe not dramatically, maybe without anyone writing an article about it, you will sit somewhere and realize that everything you went through made you exactly the person you needed to be. That is enough. That has always been enough. Thank you for listening. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. And I'll see you in the next one.